Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to try and cover chapter 1 and chapter 2. How are we doing? Okay. No, thank you. I'm good. So today we're going to try and cover chapter 1 and chapter 2 of. Last time we gave a sort of biography, a description of the biography of Yoshua, and I think I mentioned already then the famous Chazal which says Panei Moshe, Panei Chama, Panei Yoshua, Panei Levana. Moshe is like the sun, who's radiant. Moshe was clearly a really exceptional person. What he achieved in 40 years, the ups and downs of his character, Moshe served so many roles, both as a leader, as a lawgiver, as a miracle maker, as an intercessor between God and the Jewish people. Very, very, very difficult to step into those very large shoes, and that's clearly going to be Yoshua's challenge. But Yoshua, at some level, is somebody who's more down to earth. You can't stare at the sun, but you could stare at the moon. And it's very rare that we get a Moshe. I think I heard this from Rabbi Sachs. He says it's very rare to get a Moshe in the world, but it's much more often to get a Yoshua. So maybe ironically, you can actually learn more from Yoshua because he can be more like us, if you understand what I mean. He's somebody we can sort of relate to, somebody who maybe, built himself slowly over 40 years and reaches a point in his career where he, moves into a position. It's not like Moshe is picked up from the snare by some sort of miracle, by some sort of divine revelation.
How old was he again?
We don't really know. We know that when he dies, if you look at the end of Sefer Yoshua, it tells us that when he dies, he is 110, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So it says he's 110 years when he dies. My assumption is that Sefer Yoshua covers a period of around 30 years, but I can't be sure. It's interesting when Kalev actually tells us how old he was when he went as one of the Meraglim, and he says he was 40. So if we assume Yoshua and Kalev were sort of like colleagues and were contemporaries, so 40 plus minus, I don't know, could have been 35, could have been, what do I know? So it's difficult to. We know that he dies at age 110, but we don't know how long is the duration of the book of Yoshua that we got an idea to know exactly what age he was. Let's open Sefer Yoshua and start reading. And so even here, the reference point is, and it's after the death of Moshe. And we'll see this throughout the chapter. Again, there it is again. And God spoke to Yoshua ben Nun, the assistant of Moshe, saying, Moshe Avdi Mei, right? We already heard Moshe's name more than Yoshua's name 3 times. Go, bring the people over the Yarden, Kol Makom, and now he promises him. Every place where your feet treads, I'm going to fulfill my promises. By the way, these enormous borders, all the way up to the Euphrates. There were times in history where we managed to reach those expansive borders, maybe in the time of King David and King Solomon, but certainly not in this generation. Maybe we'll deal, when we get to chapter 13, we'll have to start dealing with the Nachalot and with the division of the land. So maybe then we'll deal with the borders of Eretz Israel and what exactly are the boundaries of the land. And sometimes you hear this phrase, Greater Israel. What does that mean? So we'll try and talk about that there really are 2 different modes of borders. There are borders which actually transcribe something that we call Eretz Canaan. And then we've got, as we hear, oh, by the way, it's actually this week's Lech Lecha, it's Parshat Shavua, right? In the Brit Milah, he says, Eretz Megurecha, Eretz Canaan. Eretz Canaan is the smaller land, but in Brit B'Nabatarim, he says, Minahar Mitzrayim ad Nahar Gadol Nahar Parat, which is a much wider expanse. So it seems like there really are 2.
Where do you end with it?
What?
We should go for you in with those borders.
And so there really are two types of borders. One which is far larger, which is sort of a regional influence, and the other one is a much more transcribed small land, which is more likely that we can populate. And he says, Pasuk K, verse 5, Lo yityasev ish lefanecha kol yemei chayecha, ksher hayiti Moshe hayeh imach. Nobody will stand before you all your life. How I was with Moshe, I will be with you. Lo arbecha v'lo azvecha, I won't abandon you, I won't leave you. And now we have 3 times the phrase chazak ve'ematz, right? Now chazak ve'ematz has already appeared in the Torah in reference to Moshe, in reference to Yeshua, sorry. But God says to him 3 times, chazak ve'ematz ki ata tamchil et ha'am hazeh et ha'aretz asher nishbata la'avotam l'seit lahem. Now you only say something chazak when they're a little nervous, right? So chazak, be strong. Ematz means amitz, be courageous. So you will succeed in giving them the land, which I promised. Chazak ve'ematz ma'od lishmor et kol haTorah. Apparently, it is harder, right, to keep the Torah than it is to actually conquer a land. Because I assume you conquer a land once, and you establish your borders and you establish your settlements. But to keep loyal to the Torah is a constant effort. It's constant effort. Don't depart neither to the right, to the left, from Antaskil, B'chol Asher Telech. Lo yamush Sefer Torah ze mipicha v'hagita bo yamam v'layla leman tishmor la'asok b'chol ha'ketub. Let the Torah never leave your mouth. You should study it day and night in order that you will keep everything that's written in it, and then you will be successful. Halot tiviticha, I have commanded you, chazak v'amatz al tarot v'al techat ki imcha Hashem elokecha b'chol asher telech. So this is his pep talk. I will be with you with everything you do. Notice the 3 chazak v'amatz. 1 to do with conquest, the other to do with keeping loyal to the Torah. And the 3rd one, just a general sense, I am with you, a sense of boosting his personality. And it's clear, it's clear, you can feel his sense of, I'm not saying he's quaking, but his sense of nervousness. He's taking on a huge mission. I imagine anybody on their first day as president, prime minister, whatever it might be, would feel a sense of, wow, suddenly this great weight on my shoulders, especially when you're stepping into the shoes of the person who has actually been your mentor for 40 years. How do you do that? Not only that, but there's a huge national mission which is going to be taking place. And let me maybe throw in one further ingredient, which we will see as we go through the book. There has been certainly an element in the Torah, which is a miraculous element. It's obviously starting off with the 10 plagues and with Matan Torah, which is all very, very supernatural and miraculous. But of course, even going through the wilderness, the notion that they didn't naturally get their food, they got it through the man. Already we will see that in chapter 5, the man is going to stop falling just after they've gone into the land, which is pretty much, by the way, something like 8 days from this speech. We are going from a moment in which God has been very, very present, and miracles have been done for the people, and the whole notion that we are engaging in a conquest. This is not going to be God doing the heavy lifting. This is not going to be a Kriyat Yamsuf. This is not going to be a situation in which God is going to fight the wars for us. We're going to have to fight. So I think there's an added ingredient that, again, if Moshe is like the sun and Yeshua is like the moon, there's an aspect, the sun is, got this incredible, but it's that spiritual power, whereas Yeshua is closer to earth, much more natural, and therefore that gives an added element that there are new challenges which Moshe didn't experience. Moshe could exist on this miraculous frequency, but Yeshua is going to have to work within the bounds of the natural. So I think that adds an extra challenge.
They haven't been to the land.
No, at the moment they are in Eva Har Yarden. I'll draw a map in a second. Okay, so this is the speech. By the way, Moshe's already dead 30 days, because we saw at the end of Sefer Devarim, they cried for Moshe. And if you look at Peret Lamed Daled Pasuk Chet, ויבכו בני ישראל את משה בערבות מואב 30 יום. And we're going to see, next stage. Okay, next stage, everything's going to focus in a sort of 3-day period. That's going to be our, and now we see Pasuk Yud, he tells the Shotrim, right, the supervisors of the people, the police, he says, prepare for yourself provisions. In 3 days we are going into the land. By the way, notice this very religious language. We're going into, not just into the land, we're crossing the Jordan to come to conquer the land which God has given you to inherit. And now the third stage, practical. See, the first stage is if you want motivation. That was the first speech until Pasuk Tet. Yud and Yud Aleph, the people prepare, and now Yud Bet, Joshua prepares the army. Who are going to be the advanced troops, the people who lead the attack? Do you remember there was the 2.5 tribes who wanted to stay in the Transjordan? They didn't want to cross, and they made a deal with Moshe Rabbeinu that they would be the chalutzim lifnei hamachaneh. They would be we use the word chalutz as a pioneer, but it really means they will be the attack troops. That's who they will be. And therefore, that's who he's going to talk to. He's going to make sure that his attack force is ready.
Sayarot.
What?
Sayarot.
Yeah, maybe not sayarot, maybe just the chir, but whatever, yes. Now what does he do? He talks to Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Shevet Menashe. And Yeshua says to them, remember what Moshe said to you. God is going to give you this land. Your children are going to stay in the land that Moses gave you. But you will go in full battle gear before your brothers. Notice this phrase, right? This notion of not abandoning all of the fighters of Israel. You're going to help them. By the way, notice in this speech, it's very clear that the land to the west of the Jordan, who's giving it? Hashem. Who's giving you the land on the east of the Jordan? Moshe. So there's a little bit of a stip there, right? It's nice you've chosen that land, but it's sort of second grade, okay? That's the land that Moshe gave you. It's legal, but it's not holy, right? And the land that you're going into, that's the land which God, until they have settled the land which God gives to them, and then you can go to the land of your inheritance, and you can settle it. The land which Moshe gave you. It's very meduyak. And they say to Yoshua Lemor, everything that you've commanded us, we will do. Wherever you send us, we will go. By the way, this is powerful because they're already treating Yoshua as the commander-in-chief. We did speak about the fact that he had led the wars, right? It seems like the thing which they used to talk about for many years, that you had more of a chance of being prime minister if you'd been Ramakal. That was true about Yitzhak Rabin, and it was true about Ariel Sharon, it was true about Ehud Barak. So it's true here as well. Yoshua had been the Ramakal, and now he becomes the Rosh Hashanah. So they say, we'll do whatever you say. Moshe. But notice, by the way, how much they're referencing Moshe through this chapter. Just like we listen to Moshe, so we will listen to you. And now there are 2 ways to read the next phrase. It could be, and may God be with you, right? Just like he was with Moshe. In other words, Yalla, or it could be, we're going to listen to everything as long as God is with you, like he was with Moshe. Like, hey, I want to see a few miracles here. I want to see, when we see the evidence, then we'll really be with you. But at the moment, you're still on probation, right? At the moment, we're still not quite sure. We're going to give you your 100 days, your Me'ah Yomei Chesed, but I'm still not sure exactly how we're going to treat it. The question is, how do you do you read the Rak, right? Is it Rak? only if, or is rak is indeed, right? Always a difficult word. Maybe the question would be, you'd have to hear it, right? It's always the question of how you stage things. When things, you can have the script, but then the question is how you intone. So are they saying to him, however, just like with Moshe will be, but God better be with you just like he was with Moshe? Or is it like, and indeed, may God be with you like he was with Moshe? Very, very different tone. It's difficult to know which in the end, but they do keep their side of the bargain. You are the commander-in-chief. Anybody doesn't listen will get the death sentence. And now they say to him, Chazak very much. Batzlacha. Okay, so we're ready to go. We can feel the tension in the air. 3 days. And now, of course, within these 3 days, everybody's mobilizing. The army's going to be mobilizing on the border. By the way, the enemy are also going to be aware that we've broken camp and that we're now massing on the banks of the river. And what's going to happen during these 3 days? And that's chapter 2. Yeshua is going to send spies to check out the area. And that's all we're going to hear in chapter 3. Chapter 4 and 5 are really going to be when we cross the Jordan. That's going to be the process of actually transitioning, crossing into the land. And then chapter 5 is going to be more spiritual. It's going to be about, we've just finished the war, maybe, I don't know, whatever. And now there's going to be an interesting discussion about the narrative, how we remember the war, right? I'm talking about here now. What are we going to call it? Chorvot Barzel? Are we going to call it Milchemet HaTkuma? Right? You're following the news. So the Mateh Hatufim want to remember it one way, or the Kaplanistim, right? I know we're not allowed to use these phrases, and the Bibistim want to remember it in a different way, right? So it's actually interesting. Chapter 5 is actually going to be, how do we process this moment? What's the narrative we're going to tell in this moment? So it's, by the way,
sorry, I've been listening to your shiur in Manhattan, and I haven't listened to the news.
He's my Talmud dog. Obviously there is. What are we going to remember from this war? Are we going to remember from this war? Is the main thing we're going to remember from this war that the army and that Bibi's whole policy of containment failed on the 7th of October? And Bibi, Ata Hashem, you've seen those posters, right? Are we going to, is that what we're going to remember? That's what the left wing want to say, right? That's what they're going to say in the next election. And what Bibi wants to say is, listen, there was a bad situation, but I saved Israel. And that this was Milchemet HaTkuma, right? And that we had this axis of evil, this ring of fire of it, guided by Iran. It was way beyond anything we could control. But now, in this moment, I saved Israel. That's a question of narrative. And it'll be interesting to see in 50.
500 tweets.
100%, right? Well, all I was trying to say, I wasn't trying to get into a whole political stira, but all I was trying to say is it's very, when you look at this book, maybe I'll actually draw out the book for us right in a second. But what I simply wanted to say is, if you want to look at it, we have chapter 1 to 5 is, let me actually draw it out right now.
It's the Canaanites that we're about to pass. The Canaanites.
Well, there are 7 nations of Canaan. Okay. The question was, are we fighting the Canaanites? So if you want a summary, take a look at chapter 12, and you will see that chapter 12 has a shira. Chapter 12 is going to have a shira. It looks like many shirim in the Torah. It looks like this. It looks like Hazinu. It looks like, maybe even better than that, the 10 sons of Haman, right? That's what it looks like. And it discusses 31 kings of Canaan. In other words, there are 31, maybe we'll call them cantons, 31 local areas which are part of Canaan. That's who we've got to fight.
You'd bet, you said.
Yeah, chapter 12 of Joshua. Chapter 12 of Joshua. Let's just draw out the book. And I like drawing charts of books because it helps people be able to conceptualize the book. Okay? So we'll do it English way. That will help us. Okay,
I can move the
Okay, all right, good. Can you see it?
yeah, most of it, yeah, enough, yeah.
Feeling very free moving around all the furniture here. Okay, so what do we have here? We're going to say that the book is in two sections. First, section 1 is what we call kibush, which is conquest. The second book is we're going to call hitnachalut, settlement. It's very interesting that we don't just capture and settle, capture and settle, capture and settle. We capture the land and then we settle the land. Why would we do a thing like that? Possibly because what will happen is that if you capture, settle, then your army is going to dwindle. And then people will feel comfortable, and then they're not going to want to go and capture the far reaches of the wild west of the country. So what you want to do is you want to keep your whole army intact. What you're going to obviously do is then you're going to kill the major militias, there will still be pockets of resistance, which will have to be dealt with on a tribal level. But first there is conquest, and then there is settlement. We are going to be most interested in the first half of the book. So let's just talk about that and chart it out. This is chapter 1 to 12. This is chapter 13 to 24. Okay? All right. The first half of the book is going to divide broadly into 3 sections. Chapter 1 to 5 is going to be the entry to the land. The entry to the land, by which, what we will therefore have is chapter 1. Chapter 1, which we've just read, is mobilization. Chapter 2 is going to be the spies. Chapter 3 and 4 is going to be crossing the Jordan. And chapter 5 is going to be what we could call education. Let's call it a zikaron. It's going to be some sort of education, or maybe we should call it the narrative. What is the narrative of this war? What do we have to remember? Okay, I'll give you an example for our purpose. Are we going to remember that God brought us into this land? Or are we going to say, we've got the strongest army in the Middle East? That would be an example of narrative, and how are we going to remember it, and all of that.
What does 5 say?
What? So I wrote here, entry, mobilization, chapter 1, chapter 2, spies, 3 and 4 actually crossing the Jordan, and chapter 5, which you can't read, education. Okay? Then chapter 6 to chapter 11 is going to be the wars. I'll just leave it there, okay? There are 4 wars, we'll talk about them, they describe a process, we'll get to it. And number 12, chapter 12, is going to be a shirah, a song, a victory song, where we're going to list the 31 sub-kingdoms that we have captured, okay? And then as we get into the second, we're going to see divvying up all the different nachalot, the different groups. But broadly, that is that's the pattern of the book that we're going to see. So that sets it out. Now you can. I always find it useful to be able to have a roadmap for a book. I always say the first time I ever went to New York, stayed with some friends in the Upper West Side, and they sent me down to the supermarket to go and get some pasta sauce, and some cottage cheese. After half an hour, my friend came down. He's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "Everything packaged differently. I'm looking for the OU. You don't know the first time you ever come to Israel and you see new products and they're packaged differently and the set out of the supermarket is different. Of course, after you've been there 4 or 5 times, you can almost the cereal's in this aisle and the milk is at the back and whatever it might be, and you know what brands you like, but it takes you a while. So a lot of people I think are very dazzled when you get to a sefer. It's just a jumble of text, and so that's exactly why I like trying to create a sort of a supermarket map for us, so that we can actually know where we stand in the structure of the book. So as I say, chapter 1 is the mobilization. Everybody's looking for the phones, and it's my phone. Okay, sorry. Nothing important. Okay, let's have an eraser. I think I brought one. Yeah. Okay, let's just say one other thing. Okay, so what we want to talk about now is chapter 2 and talk a little bit about the spies. Now, sending spies, is sending spies a good thing? It didn't work out so well last time, which makes you wonder why we would want to do a thing like this. Do people know the story? Do we have to go through the story? What?
What about Rachav?
About Rachav. We all know. Does anybody want me to go through the story? Happy to do it. Yeah, great. Okay. So let's take Peret Bet very quickly. It's all good. Hakoltov, we've got time. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, I'm not going through every line, but certainly the first half. We'll go through and we'll see where we go. Okay. He sent from the Shittim 2 men who are spies. Cheresh, quietly, right? Lemor, lechu re'u, Perebet. Lechu re'u et haaretz ve'yericho. Again, I want to understand et haaretz ve'yericho does not mean the whole land. Jericho is its own territory. Here, let's see if I can draw. Okay, if this is the Jordan Valley, here's the Jordan River, and here's going to be the Dead Sea. Okay, all right. Now, been down to the Dead Sea, you sort of know what I'm talking about. Okay, then you have the mountains. The mountains over here. Here are the mountains. Okay, very high mountains. Okay, and here you have the city of Jericho. The walled city, so we can draw it like that. Okay? Now, Bnei Israel are parked over here, on this side of the Jordan. So, basically, when it says Et haaretz ve'et Yericho, there is an eretz, that here's Jericho is the walled city, and there is a territory of land. Actually, here there's a bit where the river gets very close to the mountains, much closer, and therefore it sort of, on the one hand, probably Eretz Yericho was bordered by the Dead Sea over here, the mountains getting closer to the river over there, and that's probably where we're going to see that in fact, the river is going to when it splits. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler. They're going to cross the Jordan by the Jordan River splitting, but it actually splits somewhere up here. So what's very interesting is when the river splits, the water starts. They realize something's up. This is the time. It's the spring. This is Nisan. We go into during the tribe of the night. So the river's at its highest. That's the best time for your water to your limb in right. And it should be at its highest ebb. And therefore, when they see the water sort of like going out, right, they all get nervous. And what do you do when there's a time when you think the enemy are arriving, because they've got their sentries out, and they know that the Jews are packing up their tents and all of that. So then what does everybody do? Usually people don't live in walled cities. People live out in their fields. People live in their fields, they have a little small house. When do you go into the walled city? You go there in order to, if there's a war, for protection, if you've got to pay your taxes, if you want to go for a market day. So you'll go there for protection. Again, Lahavdil, I don't know, there was a famous story about the Jews of York, right? And when they were attacked, they all went up to the tower and they burnt them in the tower, right? But there was a tower, that was the place you went for protection. People piled in there. It was not in, but it wasn't going to last for too long. That's Jericho. Jericho wasn't a big town. Okay, so that's sort of what's going to happen. So they said, I'm just explaining this phrase where it says they go to check out the land. L'churu et haaretz ve'et Yericho, et haaretz ve'et Yericho. Okay. All right. Now, right? What do? They go. First thing they do, they go to this woman, an isha zona. Okay, zona means a prostitute. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm even bothering to tell you that is because You might have gone to a school like I did and learned Rashi, right? Where Rashi says that it wasn't a prostitute, because, I mean, two nice Jewish boys going to a brothel is inappropriate, that she was actually just an innkeeper. She was a shopkeeper. And they will get that from the word zona, which is from like Hazanet Hakol, right? She just was there to, she was the one who was selling the pasta and the pasta sauce that I spoke about before, right? They were just going there to buy some supplies, right? That was like, I think we understand zona as it's meant in the Torah when it says Isha zona v'chalala lo yikachu. Many places the word zona is used. Asher atem zonim achreihem. So that's exactly what she was. Why would they go to a brothel?
Source of good information.
It's a source of good information. Well, first, it's a place where you don't need to give in. You go to a hotel, they say, "Could I see your passport?" Apparently, they don't do that when you go to see a zona. In fact, you can go there incognito, right? You can go there incognito. Nobody's going to ask who you are. It's a place where, especially the women there, probably hear a lot of stuff, right? My daughter is a hairdresser. She does hairdressing. She's a student, but she does hairdressing. And somebody once told her that, it's actually funny. She comes to our yeshuv, and sometimes she'll do a day of hairdressing. When she finishes the day, I say, "Have you got up on? Do you know now everything that's going on Shavuot?" And she does. And somebody told her that the word for a sapar is a saparit, because you are mesaper. What do you do when you're at the sapar? You talk. People talk about their problems with their kids and this. And my daughter says, "You don't even want to know what I heard today," right? So I imagine there are people who are saying things that they assume nobody else will hear about. But this is a place where you can buy information, right? You can buy information. You can go there without showing your identity card. There are people there who are, talking all sorts of ways. This is a very good place to go. Okay. More than that. Okay. What's going to happen with Rachav? What's she going to do? She's going to protect them. She's going to become an accomplice, right? And there's this sense that Rachav, in many ways, maybe. Let's put it this way. A lot of times, again, I only know just from movies, but I assume it's right. A lot of times people don't exactly choose, when they're, graduating elementary school. What do you want to be? I want to be a doctor when I grow up. Oh, I'd like to be a ballet dancer. I'd like to be a prostitute, right? It's not something that people sort of choose as a career choice, okay? The people who go into prostitution are people who have been knocked by society, who have been abused by society. It's not for nothing that we're going to read that Rachav, her house is in the wall. She is literally, by her definition, on the fringes of society. She doesn't feel, the assumption is that she has gone through her fair share of abuse, let's put it that way. And maybe this is a person who feels that she doesn't owe anything to society, or put it slightly differently, I'm looking for a way out. I'm looking for an exit route. Okay, so if you want to go to a place where you are looking for intelligence information, you don't want to be known. You also want to have the possibility of finding somebody who doesn't really feel they have so much loyalty to their kingdom, and yet is maybe possibly willing to become your accomplice. This is actually not a bad strategy in order to do this. Yes?
They didn't necessarily know what they were going to find.
No, I'm just saying. I guess it's highly possible they made their way to town and they just went into the first door and the alarm sounded. They went to the first door and it just happened to be. But it also could be that they made their way to that place, right? Okay. Yericho is on tenterhooks. Pasuk bet. It was told to the king of Jericho. Yes.
Very few walled cities. Who built that wall?
I have no idea. We know that the area of Jericho, it's an oasis type place, because the Dead Sea on the one hand is it's a valley. It's very, very hot, but it also has a nachal coming down like from Wadi Kelt. So they actually have water. There is, in fact, a spring there, which we hear about in the stories of Elisha. The Arabs even today still call it the Elisha Spring. And they have the river. So they have like Egypt, they have their fields by the river, and they can draw the water in order to irrigate. So it becomes a very wealthy place. And almost, they've got the sun, so they can actually do multiple crops a year, because, so it stands to reason they're wealthy, they're well-to-do, and that's so they built the city. As I say, if you look at chapter 12 of the book, there are 31 cantons. So maybe each one had a walled city. We're going to see it later on in the War of the South and War of the North, that there are various different cities, be it Lachish, or be it Hebron, or be it Giv'on, and these were all each had a sort of castle that they'd built, again, for protection. Doesn't mean it was a huge walled city. The assumption is, how many people lived there? It might have been that only 20, 30 people lived there. But in other times, everybody would crowd in.
Did out of the chosen path, you said,
Tribes.
did any of them later join?
The way we understand it is that during the 7 years of conquest, they are part of the war effort. And when they start settling, Joshua releases them and sends them back home. As far as we know, they did settle the Transjordan. They're very, very fertile hills. So they were there in what today is called Jordan, on the east bank of the Jordan. And that was a Jewish kingdom. Now we call it one of the areas there is the Gilad. Navi Eliyahu Tishbi Eliyahu Giladi. He comes from the Eretz HaGilad. The story about Yiftach HaGiladi. All those stories are people from those tribes. Okay? Great. So, Pasuk Bet. They told to the king of Jericho, people have come to spy out the land. Take those men out. They're spies. And what does she do? She hides them. And she says, 2 men came here. I didn't ask too many questions. And they've gone. So what? When it got dark, the men left. I don't know where they went. She put them up on the roof. She hid them on the wood, on the aruchot la'alagag. There were wood stores. She hid them under the wood. And people chased after them. They chased after them on all the crossing points of the Jordan. And she goes up to them. And Pasuk Chet, they hadn't yet gone to sleep. She went up to the roof and she says, Yadati, I know, Kinatan Hashem lachem et haaretz. I know that Hashem uses God's name, has given you the land. We're terrified of you. We're all quaking, we're all melting. Because we've heard how God dried up the Yam Suf, the Red Sea from you, and what you did to the two Amorite kings, Sichon and Og, and Vanishma Vanimasla Bavenu, and we heard, and our hearts meant and we have no breath. We're breathless. We're out of breath. Wow, she's quite from this woman, right? Quite something. And now she knows how to cut a deal. She made this big speech, but she says, I've been good to you, now you be good to me, and when you come and take over the land, you should save me and my family. They agree. She lets them out of the window. She says, I will tell you where my window is. I will put a red thread, right? Okay. This is the red thread district of Jericho. And she gives a red thread, Tikvat Hashani, the red hope, in the window. And she lets them out and tells them, go up to the hills. And indeed, they go up to the hills. How long do they go there? Pasuk Chaf Bet. Look at verse 22. They go up to the mountains. So they go up to the hills and they stay there for 3 days till the people chasing them stop the alarm. And then they go back. They cross the Jordan and they go back to Yoshua and they tell him everything that happened to them. And they say to Yoshua, God has delivered us the land, and everybody's scared of us. What do we think of these spies? Good spies, hapless spies. What do we say? Their report, that's their report. Verse 24. God has delivered the land into our hands, and all of the people in the land are quaking from before us. Not very in-depth, intelligent information, right? Only went for 3 days.
But it's encouraging.
It's encouraging. The question is whether they're trying to cover their tracks. I mean, on one hand, you can look at these people and say, listen, these are 2 bumbling spies. They get caught within 24 hours of getting there. They don't do very well, right? They just fell on the right person who was actually willing to cut a deal with them. But they didn't do very much. I mean, they didn't come up with the suggestion she did, right? And very, very pathetic story. Like, who exactly were these people who he sent? We never find out their names. What's going on? I'm going to suggest something interesting about this story.
Why they were even sent?
Why they were even sent? So first of all, I'll give the other explanation, right? The other explanation is they get exactly what they need. And remember, they spend 3 days sitting in the mountains in a little cave while the army is looking for them. Right? What are they doing these 3 days? They take out their sketchbook. They draw a map of the whole place. They're watching. They've got a great touchscreen. They can see all of the roads. For 3 days, the army are doing maneuvers in order to look for them. Right? They can sketch out. There's a crossing point here, here, and here. There's a road there. You can see these are the sizes of their divisions. These are the types of chariots they're using. So they've got this amazing touchspit over the whole valley. They come back with a full geographical survey, the roads, the topography, the forces, the crossing points, and they've got some great human intelligence, which is people are very nervous. They're on high alert, right? People are very nervous. Let me just say one thing. At this point in the story, it would appear that they assume they're going to be capturing Jericho by natural means, not through a miracle. And therefore, they're going to have to find a way into this town. First of all, they've been inside. They've seen the fortifications. They've seen the thickness of the wall. They've been inside the walls. And now they have somebody who will actually throw them a rope. So if they can make their way to the wall, somebody can let up a troop of soldiers up into the city, start causing trouble. So they've got their accomplice, they've got their human intelligence, they've got their physical. It's actually not so bad. But it's still actually, funnily enough, comes out a bit of a bumbling story, right? And this is even more complex, even more curious when we contrast them with the spies of Moshe, right? Because we had a bad experience with spies. It didn't work out so well last time. What's going on here? Now, of course, this is very different than Moshe's spies. How many spies did Moshe send? 12. This is 2. We can contain it. Okay, in the spies of Moshe, who were the men? They were big deals. They were leaders. They were diplomats. They were politicians, right? Whereas in this case, who are they? You've no clue who they are, right? You'll never find them. You'll never know, right? You'll never know who they are, right? They are John Does who nobody's ever going to find out who they were. And, when you hear stories from our elite units and you hear those sorts of things, I've got a friend of mine whose son is in a Yechidah Shkufa. He said the scariest thing was when they get boots with their dog tags in, right? When they take the dog tags out of the boots, right? In other words, if anything happens to you, we don't know who you are. What? No, the mother told me about it. It's scary. But anyway, that's who these people are. So it can go now. Also, the spies, they went for 40 days. This is just for 3 days, right? So less can go wrong. And they debrief to the entire nation, whereas these 2 men debrief to the commander-in-chief, right? So this is definitely a better story. But still, what is really going on here? And I want to share one very interesting lens if we can compare and contrast with the Moroccan. When in Moshe's story of the spies, right? How did it go wrong? What was the thing more than anything else that made it go wrong? What did they see that really frightened them? Giants. Okay. Go on.
They said that we were grasshoppers.
We say we were grasshoppers, and so they seemed, but they still had a prop, and that was they saw these giants, right? And they said, "Wow, Kol Hanashim Anshe Midot." They were all of large proportions. And there it tells us. I'm looking back in Bamidbar. It says there.
Can we take that for fact?
What?
Or that?
Okay, so.
Report
So let's just look at what they say. It says that there is Achiman Sheshai B'Talai Yilidei Ha'anak, the children of the giants, the child of the giant, a giant. But when the spies report back, they say this, and I quote from Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Lamed Bet. And they say, V'sham ra'inu et hanefilim b'nei anak min hanefilim. There we saw the nefilim, the b'nei anak min hanefilim. I understand what the word b'nei, what is nefilim, for goodness sake? And we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in theirs. So they don't only see anakim or b'nei anak, they see nefilim. What are nefilim? Good question. So they can fall.
They make you fall.
Oh, they make you fall. Well, there is a time when we see the nefilim, and that's in Parshat Bereshit, just before the flood. We read one of the most cryptic paragraphs in the Torah. It says, when men began to spread over the land, and they had daughters, Vayiru b'nei Elohim et benot Adam, the sons of God saw the daughters of man that they were good, and they took women from whoever they chose. I'll skip a pasuk, and then it says, the Nephilim were in the land during those times, and now even afterwards, when the B'nai Elohim came on the Benot Adam, Vayoldu lahem hagiborim, and they had children who were giborim, Hashem Yolam Anshe Hashem. These are the great men of name. What? I'm reading from Bereshit chapter 6, verse 1 to 4. What's this story about? What does it sound like? B'nai Elohim sounds like some divine being who cohabit with Benot Adam. What happens if you do that? You create a superhero. Create a superhero, right? In other words, by the way, this is Greek mythology around people who are half human and half, mermaids or whatever it might be. I find it amazing when I read this. I mean, all the Mepharshim say you can't have an angel cohabit with a human being, create some sort of demigod or some sort of superhero. But to me, whatever the pshat is, okay, Nephilim are these sort of primordial creatures with phenomenal strength, which lived in a pre-Diluvian world. We've got Midrashim about Og Melech HaBashan, that this was a time when the giants were, and God had to take them down himself. Look, in the last 20 years, how many Marvel movies have been made, right? We're obsessed with superheroes in our culture, right? In our movies, at any rate, right? This idea that you've got people with superpowers and superheroes who can either save the world or threaten the world. They saw the B'nai Ha'anak, but what did they say? They said, these B'nai Anak, right? They're Nephilim. They're primordial. We've never heard of Nephilim ever since before the flood. They've been gone. But they were so weak in their own minds, they didn't just see large people, right? Basketball player size. They saw, and they cast onto them all of these associations. And they said, these people, they're terrifying. They've got superpowers. They're, etc., etc. That's the story. And that caused the great fear, which they managed to transmit to the people. No. That's Moshe's. This is Moshe's. I'm reading from Moshe's story. Yeah.
But this is also a different generation. The generation of the first guys have died out,
and this is a new generation.
They're on. Moshe's died, and it's like a fait accompli that they are going to go into the land. So it's a different context.
100%.
And the other generation that was always wanting to go back to Egypt as if it was an option. And is this story with the spies, because there's only two, is it also a tikkun for the previous story?
So just give me a second, I'm going exactly where you're going. Okay? Which is this, right? The best way I can describe, you've got these two bumbling guys who go to a brothel, almost get caught, they get saved by the woman, she comes up with a deal. They don't seem to be. Now, here's what I find amazing about this story, right? Mashallah mahadavar domeh, right? There are two Miluimnikim who are like sort of bored on Miluim, they're on their phones the whole time, right? And they're, standing at a bus stop somewhere waiting for a tram to take a day off and go to Beersheba, whatever it is. And along comes the JNF American tour bus, which comes along, and they stop there and they're like, IDF soldiers, right? Are you the guys who saved our people in Entebbe? You're the ones who destroyed the Iraqi reactor? You're the one, this very starry-eyed, right? Now, let's face it, these two guys are two schmerels, right? But they're wearing madim, and it says on it Sahal, and as far as these are concerned, they represent all of the strength, they themselves were flying those planes into Tehran, right? In other words, right? And it's sort of, we could do a nice comedy about it. Do you understand that's exactly the inverse of the Meraglim, right? Rachav sees these two guys, right, who almost get caught within 3 hours of entering the city, right? And don't really even know what to do, right? And what does she say? You're the Jews, your God dried up the Yam Suf. You're the ones who defeated the mighty Sichon and Og. You're the Jews of the God of heaven and earth. Now, I don't know whether they were sort of like, I don't know how they were saying, but the point is, do you understand that now the nations of Canaan are in the role of Bnei Israel when they saw it's flipped 180%. Our people stood there quivering in the bushes outside the Hebron saying, those aren't giants, those are Nephilim, right? They weren't, they were just giants. And Moshe says, you can take them, right? But inside, as you said, they were weak. Now the shoe's on the other foot. The people of Canaan have been watching the Jews mobilizing, they've been wondering, they've been there for 6 months, when are they going to invade, when are they going to invade? And slowly in their mind, they're building up this image of this invincible army, right? And finally they say, do you understand? Like this is part of this story. It's not a question whether they're successful. What do they come back and they say? They come back to Yeshua and they say, they're terrified of us. We've got the psychological advantage. That's all you need to know, right? She's giving the mood of the people. She's giving the dofek, right? And that's exactly what happens. So I think that's part of what's happening in the story. And this is, remember, 3 days we're getting ready. That's exactly these 3 states when this is happening, right? 3 days, they said, 3 days we're crossing. This is the 3 days when this drama is happening. But what we're getting an insight into, a window into the psychology of the nation. But I think there's something very powerful. It was the story of the spies which kept us back a generation. The story of the spies which denied us our entry into now we're going to have the new spies, but we've got the total psychological reversal. Instead of being a timid, scared generation, now it's the enemy who are timid. It's the enemy who is scared of us.
Why has the population changed its perspective of the Jews? Is it because
we don't know. It might have been that the people 40 years ago also felt this way. It might, but they never got a chance to talk to anyone. They stood outside looking at giants. It was their own weakness that was reflected in it was their own perception.
So
and now
they may have met Rachav 39 years earlier, they may have a different perspective.
Maybe.
But they always
Go
go
back to that, to what she said. What Leanne said of the difference, the other Moravian weren't Moravian, it said in a tour, like they literally went to.
Yes.
look at that.
Maybe the problem is they were politicians. They had to worry about their future. There may be other things. There is one further bit. One second. There's one further thing that I would like to say about this, but I'm going to leave it for next time because I'm going to try and keep to time. And I know people have got places to run. But I would like to ask people, if you can, for next time, to read through chapter 3 and 4. It will help us very much. And then we'll be able to make more headway. Toda. Sorry.